A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
Welcome to the panel, what is called Toddlers Generating Cash. My name is Victor Zaraya. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Concord and formerly the President of Kids Bop. And today we've got a great panel here that will be talking about children's music and its unique properties and how you might be able to benefit by being in that business. I think the first thing to do would be to introduce or let everybody introduce themselves shortly, who they are, why this is a relevant topic, and we can start with Karen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Lieberman, and I head up the sales and digital team at Disney Music Group. The group is responsible for revenue generated from streaming partners, physical partners, download for whatever that remains, as well as social media, web development, new technology, and a variety of other things. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. Thank you. Michael?
Hey guys, Michael Chase here from MGM Distribution. I work in my family business. I live in the US. Obviously, I'm Australian. MGM's a 22-year-old Australian music distribution company founded by my father, Sebastian Chase. I was lucky enough to grow up in the business and decided to set up base in Nashville. So yeah, that's where we are.
Excellent. And Chris?
Yes, thanks. I'm Chris Moncada. I'm SVP of music at A2IM Music. I'm probably the newest to this space, to be honest. My history takes me through, the indie electronic alternative world and Last Gang Records, where I was before A2IM purchased Last Gang, and the kids space ended up on my plate. And it's a welcome addition to the purview because I'm learning a lot.
All right, thanks for everyone joining today. I really appreciate it. I think there's a heightened focus on kids' music recently, not only because of the success of Disney and Peppa Pig and Kids Bop and whatnot, but in COVID, people have obviously changed their user and listener behaviors, and kids' music has been one of the areas that has, if not thrived, held its own. So I guess the first question that I'm asking today is children's music overlooked, and are labels missing out by not participating in that market? And I'm going to start with Chris.
Thank you. I think, again, being somewhat new to it, I think, having spent a lot of time at a major for the first 16 years of my career, I think the answer is yes. It didn't really come across our plates all that often. It was a soundtrack to a popular movie. It was a children's specific recording by otherwise pop artists from time to time. But from an A&R perspective and whatnot, I didn't see a lot of that stuff coming across my plate. So when I got the chance to really wrap my arms around this, the acquisition from Last Gang under the A2IM umbrella, one of the first main real kind of, jobs was to start a lot of collaboration across all of these brand new silos that we had. So a film silo, a television silo, a family business silo, and the one space that the music department saw we were conspicuously absent from was having the music from immensely popular shows like Peppa and PJ up and in people's faces on the DSPs first and foremost. So I think, yes, traditionally it has been somewhat overlooked, and I've been lucky enough to have a front row seat to see it kind of get woven in our business.
And Michael?
Yeah, for me, it's relatively new over the last few years. We're a fiercely independent company that worked on artist development and more bands on the indie scene, to be honest. But, we picked up a catalogue, and one of the labels we distributed, we did the label services, was the Wiggles. 30 years old, they've sold out more tickets in Australia than Coldplay. They're huge news down there, one of the highest grossing acts in Australia. And I've learned a lot, I think, but it's taken a lot of work too. And, from Kids Bop, you've got to be organised with kids' music. It's not just, get into it and start putting stuff out like I've seen a lot of people do and try and compete in the space. I think you've got to have, there's a lot of elements that come into it. And I think if you've got a good product that's got a positive message, the right message for kids, I think it's certainly a space you can compete in. I don't know that it's leaving a lot of money on the table, but it's a fun, interesting space to work in. That's for sure.
I think so. Thank you. And Karen?
Well, obviously, Disney has been in the children's music business for decades and decades. What I would say is, I don't think that people are necessarily missing out by not being a part of it. I think there's opportunity there across the board. I think the question is, echoing a bit of what Michael said, which is it's really important that you take the care and give the attention to how you're releasing it and what your plan is. Marketing towards children is something you have to be very careful about. For us, it's very much about marketing towards parents for their children. We want to take into account safety, privacy, all of that. And then, of course, we want to make sure that the message is right and that we're doing things in a way that makes sense and are actually positive for the people that are consuming it. One thing I would say is that where sometimes I feel like there's a miss happening is it's not the sexiest thing. It's children's music, but sometimes it's hard to get the attention of third-party partners and others to focus if they see something that's an artist that's at the top of the charts, and then you come to them and say, oh, but what about this soundtrack to this animated film we have with all new music? It's a little bit harder to get the attention, and they're not really necessarily the places on a lot of the services to house it beyond just the kids page. But the truth is, Disney looks at it as our audience is the entire family. And so we're constantly looking for ways that we could reach everybody across all the quadrants of our audience and not just be, relegated to the children's space.
Thank you. My family enjoys the music from all of your companies, so definitely. I enjoy most of it as well. I would say that you raise an interesting point there about various gatekeepers sometimes it's not being interested or not interested, just depending on the artist. But I think that the smart speaker has really changed that in our area. I personally, when you let the child ask, that really changes things. I would imagine all of you are seeing enormous lift from that sort of thing.
Without speaking about specifics, when we break out our streaming from a week-to-week basis, Amazon is a solid second on several titles.
Good. I think it's great, and it shows, the power of everything that we're doing to, excite the audience, right? The family audience. So my next question is, I guess, to think of a success that you've had and kind of maybe give a little clarity to our Indie League audience, or even more fun, something that you thought would work that didn't work. I have many of those, but I won't share them. Michael, you want to start first?
Yeah, for me, we had to go in because the band had been in market, and I think you actually originally worked with them before me, and so then the band
did a terrible job. So you cleaned it up.
I did. You did not do a terrible job, but the band broke apart and they got back together. Like they had a new lineup, and so the last few years have been about repositioning for us. The band's an Australian band, so it's very difficult to get into the market. But we got Hulu in the US, Netflix globally, Treehouse in Canada. So I think they've all been massive wins for us to reposition the band in North America. Touring has played another huge role, to getting the band established. You notice everyone engages with you pretty quickly once, everyone's gone to the show and seen how great they are. So I'd say they're our wins, to be honest. We've done a good, steady job in repositioning the brand, and I hope the next 5-6 years are going to be even more powerful for them.
Thank you. And while Karen talks about her wins, think about some things that didn't work. I'm thinking of a few right now that didn't work for me. Karen?
So I'll take off of something I was mentioning before, which is sometimes it's tough to find outlets for children's music in the common spaces. And so the biggest success that the Disney Music Group has had is with the curation of our own and owned playlists across the partners. So our Disney Hits playlist is a brand unto itself. It's our flagship. But from there, we've got several other playlists that have hundreds of thousands of followers. And that's, of course, only on the platform where you can see the follower counts. We spend a great deal of time curating those and giving them a lot of love and attention and focusing them based on the brands that we are actively working at the time. So, for instance, if Frozen 2 is our priority, we take over the Disney Hits playlist, the cover and all of that. Your classics stay on there. For us, it's about that cross-generational appeal, making sure that, you know, if a parent is 32 years old and they have a 5-year-old child listening, that something comes on that actually reminds them of their childhood too, on occasion. So that for us is a really significant piece of our business and a really good success story that we've had. And by the way, we don't discriminate. That's on all partners, our Disney Hits initiatives, as well as all of our other playlist initiatives. We kind of try to craft them so that there's something for everybody, no matter which partner you log on to.
A good idea. Thank you. And Chris?
Yeah, what comes to mind is we had a unique experience when we launched the Peppa Pig album in July of last year. We, you know, it's not like a regular pop record or a rap record where you might roll 5 or 6 singles out before that main product hits that kind of swollen streaming base. So we knew we had a YouTube audience. We knew we had a retail audience. We knew we had all that stuff set into place. So we put out one song and then we set the date for the actual rest of the album. And luckily, I think for us in hindsight, it fell on the same date as a brand new record by an American rapper named Iggy Azalea. And she caught wind of this pretty quickly. And so we had a bit of a viral moment on our hands, which no one can ever really plan for. But it all was happening socially with Iggy kind of tweeting at the Peppa Twitter account, you know, trying to start a beef. And you know, to your point, Karen, like we really had to strategize with the brand people in the family department about, you know, how much do we engage? Like just enough, not too much, you know, and we had a lot of fun with it. And I think it really helped us. It definitely helped us as far as a PR perspective. And we got a lot more press than we normally would have for the record launch. But that was really something that we weren't quite expecting, but we had a lot of fun navigating through upon the launch of arguably our biggest record of the last, 2 years.
That's great. That's a great story. I will tell you that one of the things that Kids Bop did that wasn't so successful was many years ago, we released a Kids Bop Beatles cover album and it was not one of our better performers. And, we thought at the point, it really helped us though define who we were, which is today's current hits. And so, while we do cover classic music, that was kind of something that went awry, that went kind of askew, if you will, that worked out for us. Does anyone have any stories they'd like to share in that realm, or a funny, interesting anecdote or something for our audience? I'm going to start with Karen.
It's hard to put a finger on where, things have gone awry. What I would say is one thing that's new for us, and that's been an interesting thing, is with the launch of Disney Plus, there's been a lot of changes in the consumption of Disney content overall. And so the timing of it and how it's consumed and what people are doing and how they're experiencing it. And so for that, we've had to rejig and kind of start fresh in many of the approaches that we take, so that when we look at High School Musical, the series, it's not that it's not successful. It actually is quite successful for us. But it was on a different trajectory. It did not release and then explode and go to number one like the High School Musicals, of the past, or Descendants has done for us. Instead, it took a while, and then what we really saw was, so Disney Plus, including High School Musical, the series, launched in November. What we saw was the winter break was this moment where really things really kicked into gear, where kids had time and families had time.
Great point.
And they were off from school. So, I wouldn't call it necessarily things that didn't pan out, but I would call it that we're constantly learning and iterating and understanding how the changing world is going to change how people are taking in our music.
I think that's a really good point you raise about how children's music has different times that can be successful, not just release date, winter break, or there's a variety of days, that could work differently than traditional music. Mm-hmm. Chris, do you have anything, a funny anecdote or something?
Well, that just to kind of to continue your thought, I think what I learned very quickly when I got into the into the space was that, and you will all know this just from dealing with pop music and regular rock or rap or whatnot, is that you'll normally see your spike or your week will start and your Friday will be a spike with new release lists and whatnot coming out on streaming. And then you'll see a dip on the weekend. You know, if you look at your back end, that's what it looks like. But the kids' music was basically an inversion of that. And I saw that really quickly. And so we had to learn. It's like, so we were used to putting records out on Fridays and leading them up that way in the pop world. But we had a lot of learning to do, to Karen, to your point, about when is the audience going to be there and when are they going to be the most receptive to our messaging from not only a release standpoint, but just a marketing standpoint. And the other thing I'll say is that we've had to really wrestle with the metadata, especially on the voice activation part, where if the child is calling to, you know who, I don't want to say it because she'll start playing something. We need to make sure that the data that we have ingested into that DSP is going to be receptive. So the call outs aren't just like, you know, there's not a audio book starting or an ad or a product that's being pitched or whatnot. So we've done a lot of learning in that regard too, and it's not always you know, a home run the first time.
Michael, do you have anything, a funny anecdote?
Yeah, not really that much, to be honest. I kind of echo what everyone else is saying. To be fair, maybe you know, because the group has had such a history in the US and they had such a big moment on Disney. The touring was really big at one point, and reactivating that. I think a few of the tours were light on, just going off. Oh, yeah, this is what we did 15 years ago. To be honest, no problem. Really much more.
So the last question, the last thing to talk about is kind of solid takeaways that you want to share with our Indie Week attendees on how this area might work. One thing I'll add, you know, is that kids is not this one thing, one size fits all. Kids can be different things to different people. 0 to 3 is definitely different than 3 to 5, 5 to 8. If you have children, you know, a 6-year-old does not want to be it's called a 4-year-old. 10-year-olds are very different. So there's a lot of diversity within our space. Let's see, I've spoken all these. So Karen, I'm just going to go left to right on my screen. Do you have anything that you'd like to add or conclude with?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, you just said pretty beautifully, which is that there's very different audiences within the kids' broader scope of things. You know, we very much target our music differently depending on who our audience is. We like to believe that something like, you know, the Moana soundtrack or the Frozen 2 soundtrack certainly is all ages, as is a lot of our stuff. But we also take a look and say, okay, Disney Junior music, which is really, you know, nursery rhymes and Mickey mornings and things like that. Those are very clearly for toddlers. So it's making sure that we understand that, but making sure we understand how to approach that audience, because we're not simply not going just to a toddler. The other thing I would say is voice. It's been mentioned several times already in this discussion, is a significant factor for us, not just because of the partners that thrive on voice, but more broadly for us. The devices sit in the shared space within a family's home. And then what we've taken into account is what are the ways that we can interact with our consumers, whether they're children or their parents or what have you. I mean, we take into account the order and the cadence of the songs on our playlist, so that when they play, you know what you're hearing or you know what to expect. Recently, a rapper released a song with the title Moana. The very first thing we did, not because we had a problem with it or anything, was check to make sure that if a child asked for Moana, that they got what they were asking for, because you've got to take into account that the audience isn't always grown enough to make those decisions and understand for themselves.
Thank you. Good answer. Michael, do you have any final words of wisdom?
I think probably it's similar to what you guys are saying. Know your audience. You know, the kids have got such a different age group. You've got to be very focused on that. You know, TV and YouTube have been a big part for us. The Wiggles are very, very strong on learning. So it's that early toddler just past, you know, it's all focused around the learning for kids. It's very colourful. You know, you switch the television on and they're dancing in front of it all the time. So knowing who your audience is mainly the big thing for me. It's not soon as they get a year older, they're like, don't want to know about that anymore. You know, I say to my little nieces and nephews, I'm like, illegals? They're like, don't.
Exactly.
Listen, I think fruit salads are yummy, yummy.
And then last but not least, we're running out of time. Chris, do you have anything that you'd like to close out with?
Yes, really quickly, I think that, given the majority of our business from the kids space is on streaming, I've learned very quickly, and everyone else I think would be wise to think about, is now we're generating a large, it is going up, week over week as a group, but we are generating a massive amount of streams from a relatively small group of people. So we're seeing, rather than a regular streaming strategy where you go for all the big lists across your genre, hoping that that turns into personal playlists and profile lists for that artist, you're really looking at more of a loyal listener base. And how do you pour water on that seed and have those people coming back and listening to literally the same record over and over and over again, and while them telling their friends and providing them with the proper tools to spread your piece of content along within their inner circle. So it's a different playlisting strategy once you have, to my colleague's point here, identified your audience.
Well, thank you. Repetition is a great point. We're out of time, so I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was a really good conversation. You can see that the children's music is being handled by some great people, but we look forward to everyone else getting involved. And if you have any questions, you can either contact us directly or contact someone at A2IM, and I'm sure they'll be proud to and happy to connect you to any of the speakers today. Thank you very much. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.